How do you confront situations when people have to leave? Should you be the one to open the door for them, to let go in the name of love? Or should you do everything just to hold on them, to refrain them from leaving? Good day, everyone. Our topic for today focuses on the Iliad. Iliad is an epic poem written by the ancient Greek writer Homer. But what exactly is an epic? It is a long narrative poem written in a dignified, majestic style about the deeds of a hero who exemplifies the traditions or history of the people. Epics must begin in media res, in the middle of things. The poet begins the story after much of the action has already taken place. He had to write in dignified style and begin with an invocation in which they ask a muse for divine inspiration. As taken in Lesson 3, Iliad is an amazing tale of heroes and heroines, gods and goddesses. But most of all, it is a story of Achilles, of his anger and determination, and of his slaying of the Trojan hero Hector. The purpose of the war was to recover the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen. But her husband Menelaus naturally swore vengeance. He called upon the kings and princes of Greece to help him. Among those who responded were Achilles, Ajax, Diomedes, Odysseus, and Nestor. Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae and brother of Menelaus, was chosen commander-in-chief. Was everything smooth and easy? Of course not. The first attempt of leaving for Troy was futile. The winds seemed to be against them, which lasted for 2 years. This was because Agamemnon offended the goddess Artemis on his way to the Trojan War by accidentally killing a wild deer. To appease the goddess who had caused the unfavorable weather, preventing the movement of the expeditionary force against Troy, he had to offer Iphigenia, his only daughter, to wife Clytemnestra, Helen's sister, as a sacrifice. After 2 years of preparation, the Greek fleet of more than 1,000 ships and an army of 100,000 men assembled at the port of Aulis in northeastern Greece. Hence, the saying that Helen had a fate that launched 1,000 ships. Is this story true? There really was a city named Troy in northeastern Asia Minor. Its existence was proved by the archaeological work of Heinrich Schliemann, who began his excavations there in 1870. Eventually, evidence of at least 9 cities was uncovered on the spot, cities that existed from about 3000 BC until the Roman period 30 centuries later. Ancient Troy was destroyed by fire in about 13th or possibly early 12th century BC. The stories about the Trojan War were based on the actual struggle over control of the rich trade routes through the Hellespont or Dardanelles. In the more familiar mythology, the initial cause was the act of vengeance by a goddess with a golden apple, Eris, kidnapping of Helen by Paris, and the capture of Troy by Greeks hidden on a hollow wooden horse. All of these are all but just a myth. One of the major events was the violent quarrel between Agamemnon and Achilles. Here, Agamemnon demands Achilles, the best warrior among the Greeks, to fight for them against Troy. Yet he refused and swore not to take part in any future battles or present battles of Greeks. Why? Because Briseis, a concubine of Achilles, was taken by Agamemnon. Also, Patroclus, his best friend, urged him to fight with him to advance against the Trojans. But he still refused. Patroclus left, bringing Achilles' armor unknowingly to be worn in the battlefield, most likely to overwhelm enemies by Achilles' presence, as if. Unfortunately, Hector, Troy's prince and champion, killed Patroclus, thinking it was Achilles. His death enraged Achilles. He went to the battlefield and slayed the Trojans. Then he demanded Hector for a truce, a spear throw. This is Hector, the hero of Troy, equal to Achilles in courage and fighting skill. Unfortunately, he was the one who killed Patroclus. This scene was the farewell between Hector and Andromache with son Astyanax. Here, his wife was begging for mercy not to face the brutal Achilles in the battlefield, yet he still opted to push through for Troy, for his honor and reputation. This is Andromache, the lovely wife of Hector, daughter of Aeson, king of Thebe and Triontophila, the mother of Astyanax. Why was Andromache on the battlements? She went to the battlements to look over the battlefield, hoping Hector would come back alive. At first, the truce was fair and square, until Athena stepped in and favored the Greek Achilles. Do you recall Athena's losing in a beauty contest? That is why Aphrodite's for the Trojans and she for the Greeks. Hector died, and his body was dragged around the city of Troy up to Patroclus' graveyard. Now Achilles has avenged his best friend's death. What misfortune did Andromache suffer from Achilles? Achilles made her a widow, and her son Astyanax without a father to grow up and look up to, and the worst, she may end up being a slave of Greeks forever. This is King Priam, father of Paris, Cassandra, and Hector. He was known to be stern, strong, loving, courageous, relentless in the desire to protect his people. These strengths, in many cases, turn out to be some of his weaknesses too. But you know what, as a king, he went helplessly to a Achaean camp the night after a day's truce. He knelt down on his knees, kissed the murderous hands of Achilles, and begged for mercy. That is to allow him to bring home his dead son's body for proper funeral pyre. Was it dangerous for King Priam to ransom the body of Hector? Yes, of course. He's like a mouse in a lion's den, ready to be devoured any time. The outcome? Achilles somehow felt the grief of a father for his son as he grieved for his own best friend. He agreed to the poor father's plea and gave Troy a reprieve from battle. All of the women in Troy, from Andromache to Helen, cried out in grief when they first see Hector's body. For 9 days, the Trojans prepare for Hector's funeral pyre, and the Trojans light Hector's pyre on the 10th day. Achilles fought his last battle with Memnon, king of the Ethiopians. After killing the king, Achilles led the Greeks to the walls of Troy. There, he was mortally wounded by the heel. By whom? None other else but Paris, an inexperienced warrior. How did this happen? This was the scene wherein Thetis dips Achilles in the Styx. The sea nymph Thetis is seen dipping her son Achilles in the river Styx to make him immortal. Only the heel by which she holds him remains untouched by the waters and thus vulnerable to injury. And so, although Paris was inexperienced, not a good archer too, he was able to take the shot perfectly, that it went straight and struck the heel, the most vulnerable part of Achilles. That is, being guided by either a god Apollo or the goddess Aphrodite. It was then that the crafty Odysseus stepped forward with a stratagem. Aided by the goddess Athena, he planned the construction of a huge wooden horse with enough room to contain 100 warriors. Secretly, the best warriors were hidden inside, then the rest of the Greeks boarded ship as though to sail home in defeat. The Trojans thought the horse was a peace offering to Athena. One of the Trojan priests, Laocoon, warned against Greeks even bearing gifts. Cassandra, the daughter of King Priam, also predicted disaster. She had been given the gift of prophecy, but had then been cursed. Her prophecies, though always true, would never be believed. And so their warnings were shouted down, and the breach in the wall was made to allow the horse to be dragged in. As the Trojans slept that night, the Greek warriors emerged and signaled the waiting ships to bring back the rest of the Greeks to Troy. Soon, thousands of Greeks were swarming into the city. By morning, only a mass of ruins remained. Nearly all the inhabitants were slain. Raphael's Fire of Troy is shown in this 16th century earthenware dish from Faenza. This modern reconstruction of legendary Trojan horse stands at the archaeological site of Troy in what is now Turkey. The ending: Andromache bows her head in captivity. She falls as a prize to Achilles' son, Neoptolemus, who is equally violent and temperamental as his father. Their young child Astyanax was thrown off the Trojan walls by the Greeks for fear that he would grow up and avenge his father and city. As for Helen, she returned to her husband and the Greeks sailed for home. The one whose voyage home took the longest was Odysseus. The adventures of his return trip were told in the second Homeric epic, the Odyssey. If you were to console Andromache, what will you tell her about her sufferings? Well, most likely you would say that yes, the present may be dark and scary, but as they say it, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and this too shall pass. Don't lose hope. Keep the faith strong and burning. How should one handle the pain of letting go? According to Healthline, there are ways. Listen to this. Create a positive mantra to counter the painful thoughts. How you talk to yourself can either move you forward or keep you stuck. Create a physical distance. It's okay to be alone for some time. Do your own work. Practice mindfulness. Be gentle with yourself. Allow the negative emotions flow. If you need to cry it out, then cry it out all day, all week, all month, and feel the relief. Accept that the other person may not come back anymore. And most importantly, engage in self-care. Read the lines from the farewell between Hector and Andromache and describe the emotion that comes with the lines. How does literature stir emotion? Well, it induces emotion to us readers, making us feel something of what the characters are experiencing. We know events may not be real, but the emotions can be. We can feel fear, joy, excitement, and grief. Supposing Hector had not been killed and had returned to Andromache, what could have been the ending? Well, your title could have been Hector and Andromache Reunited. It's surely an exciting writing sequel. Why don't you try it, student writers? Iliad may have ended up tragically, but the love and the courage, so as the inspiration by the characters, are etched in our hearts. Thanks so much, everyone. May you have learned from this lesson, the Iliad. Good day.